All right, welcome back, Chelsea fans, to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. That's right. We're back in the States after a 10-day chaotic journey throughout the UK. Many pubs, many storylines, many sackings, many hirings. There's just everything happened while we were over there. It was chaotic, 94th minute equalizers and all the sorts. So, we are back because obviously the news breaks on January 6th, officially, although I think we've all known since Maresca was sacked that Liam Rosenior is going to be the new manager of Chelsea Football Club. This comes after a incredibly weird week for Chelsea, an incredibly weird week for Strasbourg, a weird week for him, probably, I would imagine, just throughout this entire thing. But the club does make the official announcement on January 6th that he is joining from Strasbourg until 2032. Whatever that means when there's a buyout clause, who knows? He is obviously here. He's excited. He did his farewell press conference at Strasbourg, which I thought was a incredibly classy move from a guy who I think was genuinely excited about managing that team and that the profile of players. Now he makes the journey over to London to take over ahead of the FA Cup match against Charlton at the weekend, which obviously leaves club hero Callum McFarlane, I should say, in the instead for the Fulham game on Wednesday. So you're listening to this on Wednesday. Of course, we have our lovely, lovely guest and a person, honestly, we don't get to do many podcasts together because Dan steals you all the time, Sam, but very, very happy to have CFC Central Sam on the show to break down everything about Liam Rosenior. How are you doing, Sam?
Oh my God. I mean, I always look forward to our pods. I get to do them once a year like Christmas. So I'm super happy to sit here with you and, do the breakdowns. Obviously, no disrespect to Dan, who I love very, very dearly and I get to see every other week. But, it's nice for him to go away to the UK, have a nice break from me. And Nick can step in and, listen to me waffle for the better part of an hour. But glad to see you rejuvenated and had a little bit of nice beers and food in you. So I think you're good to go for this one, Nick.
I sure hope so. And for those wondering, hey, why do you get Nick instead of Dan? Dan's been under the weather for like the last 3 days. He had a terrible travel day, so I just look, I have the day off. I'm gonna step in and do this one. But Sam, not for the first time since you've been a part of the London is Blue podcast network, we have a new coach again at Chelsea Football Club, and of course, this whole thing, the Maresca mutual parting of the ways or whatever the hell it was to getting to Liam Rosenior is now official within I think the better part of the week. So how has the last week been for you as you've had to ramp up your study for another new manager at Chelsea Football Club?
Oh my God. I mean, this happens to me every single year under Blue Coat. So I've sort of started expecting it. I was, looking forward to sitting down and watching properly Emmanuel Emega, Valentin Barco, and a couple of other players in Europe, and all of that went into the bin. So I've had to just get my, dust my gloves off, sit out and watch another 5, 6 games of Strasbourg very, very closely. But used to it, Dan, unfortunately, as it is. But yeah, with the Maresca thing, I really don't know what to believe. It's fooled me once. It's happened with Pochettino. It's happened with
Yeah.
Potter. Briefs start flying out from here and there. Maresca farted at the lunch lady. Some academy graduate did something. So I'm not going to believe any of it, to be very honest. And I'm just going to try and offer the most in-depth and well-researched perspective I can on Rosenior, and hope that he's up to the task. And it's always the thing with us, Nick. We're now looking at a completely different kind of Chelsea, not going for the proven stars, not going for experience, not going for the kind of things that we're used to. So how do you assess this? How do you even look at this and say, it's a good fit for Chelsea, quality wise, culture wise, and it's a tough task to do. So hopefully I can, give you the best perspective here. And this is probably the best Liam Rosenior sort of insight that you can get. And then we're hoping that London is Blue can do that for you.
I have no doubt that we are going to deliver, largely because you have done the work and not me on this one. So I do want to start off with friend of the show, Jesse Parker Humphreys, who I think many of you will know and know quite well. I was struggling to put my emotions together for this because I think after so many managers and so many sackings and so many drama storylines, and I think just life as a Chelsea fan over the last 20 years, like, you kind of get numb to this sort of thing. It's not the show stopping thing that maybe it used to be. And I think that Jesse did a phenomenal job in kind of summing up maybe how I feel about this and just put it into a more eloquent statement than what I was kind of thinking in my brain, although I haven't slept in 25 hours, so who knows. She said, or they said, I should say, the I find the managerial merry-go-round at the club quite exhausting, but it's hard not to feel excited to see a black South London boy who has repeatedly been willing to speak out about social causes managing Chelsea. And, this is, a part of who Liam Rosenior is, Sam. I mean, you think about, you know, fact that he has done broadcasts before, that he has done things like coach's voice before, that he has no problem being in front of cameras, that he has no problem saying what's on his mind. This is a well spoken, eloquent, thoughtful individual who also has a bit of a firebrand side to him, as I'm sure you have seen throughout the number of clips that have come from the halftime team talks and stuff like that. Can you just kind of give the behind the scenes for those who might not know anything about Liam? Uh, what is he about? Where does he come from? How did he become Chelsea's next manager?
Mhm. Absolutely. So, let's start with London. So he was born in Wandsworth to a father of Sierra Leonean descent. And Rosenior began his footballing journey with Bristol City, and he was a midfielder there. And interestingly, this is courtesy Chelsea Youth, a good friend of the pod. So he said that both he and his father had unsuccessful trials at Chelsea. So there was a connection there quite early. And Liam went on to have a very good career. He went on to switch positions to fullback, played for Fulham, played for Reading, played for Hull City, and then ended his career at our beloved Brighton. He met a young analyst there called Lawrence Stewart during his time at Hull. Paul Winstanley was Brighton's head of scouting when Liam was still playing at Brighton. And when he was let go from the Seagulls, Brighton basically told him to come through and do some coaching with the Brighton under 23s. And Sam Jewell, who's now our head of global operations, I don't know what the portfolio is, but he's basically somebody who helped him during that coaching task. And very interestingly, Dan, Nick, one of the players there in the Brighton under 23s was Robert Sanchez. So lots of paths converging in this one. I think there's just too
But
many coincidences for us.
the whole cast of characters is here, right? I mean, everybody that you just mentioned, everybody's coming back together.
So I don't know, serendipity or just coincidences. You can take that for yourself. But yeah, after leaving Brighton, Liam just joined Derby County, and like you mentioned, he's done a lot of punditry. He's done a lot of media appearances, and from what I've read, his Derby County stint as a first team coach actually came because of his punditry, because people loved how eloquent he was and how great a perspective he had on the tactical side of the game and how he was spotting patterns. And he actually then became a first team coach under Dutch manager Philip Cocu in 2019. And 2 years later, he became assistant manager to the new head coach, Wayne Rooney. And his first head coach job just came very shortly after at Hull City. And they were lingering one place above the relegation zone. And he took over in November. He steered them to 15th and basically got the next season where he coached Liam Delap there. So another coincidence. And then he led Hull next season to 7th. But after he basically narrowly missed out in the playoffs, he was very surprisingly sacked. And Hull went on to narrowly avoid, I think, a relegation on goal difference the next season, which says a lot about his his influence there. But I think Strasbourg, with the blue core hierarchy there, knowing that how well he's been evolving as a manager, his strengths, and obviously a lot of them have worked with him. It just made sense for them to reach out to him and say, "Do you want to come and coach one of the youngest squads in Europe?" And obviously, you've seen somebody who's very tactically versatile. He's in terms of experience, I would say slightly more experience than when Enzo Maresca came here from Leicester. So there's a little bit more to look there. His tactical systems also mirror a little bit of what Maresca does. They've both got the same influences in Pep Guardiola and Roberto De Zerbi, and also the fact that we've talked about he's coached Sanchez, he's coached Penders, he's coached Delap, Andre Santos, Kendry Paez, Sarr, others. So there's definitely like a good thread running in there. So just made it very difficult to ignore that kind of appointment. And he's essentially what we're following the Red Bull model, where the lower clubs breed talent, managerial talent, footballing talent for you to pluck and then try and grow into the next level. So that's where we stand.
Yeah, and I mean, anyone who's been following, Rosenior, he has been mooted as a future Chelsea manager basically the minute Maresca was hired. This is not a surprise. This is not anything that really caught us off guard. I think maybe how early it's happened is the thing that would catch people a little bit off guard, but who could have foreseen Maresca blowing up in spectacular fashion like he did, and the emergency sacking and all that sort of stuff going on. So this is I think part of Bluco's plan pipeline is to maybe do the same thing with Gary O'Neill someday, who just got signed up to be Strasbourg's next manager in place of Rosenior. So this is the way they want to operate, like it or don't like it. And I think plenty of people have expressed their opinions through all sorts of things like the supporters trust survey and all sorts of other stuff. This is what the model is set up to do. And I think the timing of this is odd midseason, but not totally unexpected. But let's kind of dive in to his performance, Sam, what he has done at Strasbourg, obviously leading them to European football last season, and a little bit of his tactical style, because I think this is going to be the thing that people are most curious about, which is like, are we going to see Maresca ball 2.0, or are we going to see something a little bit different?
That's definitely quite an intriguing question. And the first thing that you ask is, what is he going to do when he's going to come over here? Which is very hard to do, because when I was watching Thomas Tuchel and I wanted to see what he'd bring from Borussia Dortmund, I mean, he'd played 11 formations there, and it was very hard for me to sit down and figure out what he was going to do with the squad. And I think Rosenior finds himself in a similar conundrum. We did talk about how him and Maresca both are big fans of the same managers, so there's no coincidence that the core principles for both of them are quite common. The philosophy is the same. Rosenior, he's been a little bit more adventurous with his profiling, I'd say, and his use of systems. So I would say when I looked at Strasbourg, they've at least tried 10 different formations, and they've gone 4-4-1-1, they've got 4-4-2, 4-5-1, 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1, 5-3-2, 4-3-3, depending on opponent, game state, even just for the sake of experimenting, which is quite, I think, something that I really liked about Rosenior. He just took that first season to test how his strikers would function alone, and then in two-man iterations, how do they play together? Then he tried to say, okay, is the double pivot good, or do I need three midfielders? How does the double pivot change when I have a back three? And how are the wing backs going to function? He didn't, sort of like looked at the wing backs and said, okay, what if I play two attackers in those wing back slots? So quite an interesting manager in that sense. He's a bit of an innovator. Amorim just took Giovanni Kenda, obviously is now playing there, but before that, Jenny Katamo was playing as an attacker, and he said, "I'm going to play you at wing back." And Rosinio went one ahead and said, "I'm going to change both wing backs to attackers and see, how that's going to play off." So, I would say he's quite open to trying new things, which I think is a big change over Maresca. And I think the one thing that everybody will applaud is that he plays fullbacks where they're supposed to be played. He doesn't invert them too often. He's got a couple of options which are quite versatile, so he does use them in those inverted areas, but most of the time they're bombing forward, they're offering a lot of width, they're underlapping, they're offering what fullbacks are supposed to do. So I think that'll be quite the different change. from a tactical perspective, Dan, especially in possession, just to try and put some data points in, Strasbourg attempted the second fewest long balls, both last season and this season, the half season that they've just completed. They've also had the fewest fast breaks in Ligue 1, and Chelsea have had the most in the Premier League. So 9 to 30, that's the difference between both those sides. So Strasbourg, to utilize the speed that they have and also to confine or at least pay a little bit of respect to what Rosenior's demand is, to be possession heavy, to be smart with the ball. They rely a lot on what De Zerbi used to do, artificial transitions. I would say they're like princes of the medium length passes. So they don't really go long, but they will go 20-yard, 25-yard passes, quick short passes through lines to try and find people, and then the attack explodes. So there's a lot of keeping your foot on the ball, waiting to provoke the press. And they do that against the likes of PSG also, come and press me. And then they try to play around you, they try to play through you. And that's something that we've seen in the Premier League, and it's worked to good effect. So um, just in that sense, he knew that the speed is there. So last season, he had some very quick attackers. Morera is still there, Emega is still there, but Dylan Bakwa is gone. Diarra has gone to Sunderland, Bakwa is at Nottingham Forest. So there was a lot of speed. The goalkeeper was different, so there was a little bit of a modest role in build-up. But this season, he's just evolved a little bit and said, "What if I take it one step further?" So Mike Penders, for example, he's often 30 to 40 yards away from goal as an extra centre-back option. He's so far this season uh, no goalkeeper in Ligue 1 who's played at least 900 minutes averages more touches than Mike Penders outside the penalty area, which is about 40 touches per 90 minutes. So again, it's just about trying to take these little innovations and see what you can do to improve the side. And I think that's the evolution for Strasbourg. Not to go long, be possession savvy, use the ball well, but also be quick. Also give a lot of mind to the fact that you're built for pace, you're built for power. And I think the profiles between Strasbourg and Chelsea are quite interesting in that manner up front. So a lot of congruence.
Yeah, so you mentioned a couple of things there that I want to dive into. I think for those who are fans of the overlapping fullback, they may be rejoicing in their homes as they listen to this. Sam, is that your expectation for what we're going to see with the likes of Malo Gusto and Marc Cucurella, who are further forward than most fullbacks in the league anyway? Do you anticipate that their role largely stays where it is, and maybe instead of going inside, they stay outside a little bit more?
I mean, I've seen them do both, to be honest.
Okay.
And if you see somebody like a Gela Due, who's Desiree Doue's brother, he plays for Strasbourg, so he's a right back by trade, but he's played right wing back, and from that position, he's essentially gone to maraud into overlapping positions, but he's also gone into underlaps. He's also come a little bit narrow to try and open the flank. So you'll see these rotations everywhere through Strasbourg. There's some interesting patterns that are like quite rehearsed on the training ground. You'll see, for example, the one moment the wing backs will hold with, and you'll see, Due, for example, very wide to try and cross inside, and then after that you'll suddenly see him, inside, and you'll see the wingers move outside. So the rotations happen a lot. The interesting question for me is not whether Gusto or Cucurella play those positions. It's more about whether Reece James is there, and I think that's going to be the big question for us. Is the brief to play him central midfield really got to do with preserving his fitness? And are you going to stop a young manager who's quite, risk happy, trigger happy, to give a world class right back the option of playing where he made his career under Thomas Tuchel? I think that's very, very tempting if Rosenior goes for a back three. But if it's a back four, he might have similar sort of temptations to throw Reece in there. So I think that's the big question for me, Nick.
All right. And then I want to talk about the medium passing as well. Chelsea under Maresca, when we've been in kind of possession dominant games, utilize that full field switch to try and get some mismatches, right? I mean, that's kind of been a hallmark pass within the team, whether that is Enzo Fernandez or one of the center backs or whoever. There's usually a player with some width who has the opportunity to then pair up with a midfielder or a fullback to create those overlaps. Do you anticipate that we're still going to see that, but maybe in not so much of a dramatic pass? It's a little bit more manageable.
Well, that's definitely a lot of it is down to speculation, to be honest. Interestingly, I did read that Strasbourg had the fewest switches in League on this
Mm.
season with just 12. So they're not really, you know, a lot of, switching from one side to the other, although they do rely a lot on drawing overloads to one side and then quickly moving the ball through short passes to the other side. This is something that they like doing. And, a lot of people were sort of asking on, Discord as well as on Twitter what the difference is in terms of Maresca's build up and Rosinha's build up. I think a lot of it has to do with just the orientation. So you will see that Maresca obviously wants to play through the center and he wants to provoke that pressure. He wants to compress that center before the ball goes wide. I think with Rosinia, the opposite is true for most of the times. He likes to go wide first, and then when people go wide, he likes to go inside to Barco, or then he tries to move into that box midfield and push through the center. So the idea is to vacate the center first, not crowd the center first and vacate it to the wings. And this is just on the basis of 6 games that I've seen. It's just how he likes to do it. And whether that's by design or whether that's by just the fact that Strasbourg don't have the profiles we have. If you have an Enzo Fernandez there, if you have a Moises Caicedo there versus Valentin Barco and Decore, then obviously you're going to go into a lot of trouble. So I think that's just maybe it'll be interesting to see what Rosinia does when he has those options. Just another example, Nick, is the fact that you've often seen Caicedo at the bottom of a diamond and you've got 3 players in front of him. Rosinia tries to do double pivot most of the times. He's got a box midfield in there, so there'll be 2 pivots at all times in the middle, irrespective of how many players are marking them or what the orientation or the man marking scheme is from the other side. So it's quite an interesting nuance, and I'll be quite intrigued to see whether he changes, knowing that you've got somebody like a Caicedo who can cover that space by himself, and then he adapts accordingly. And I think that's going to be the big question through everything that we discuss. It's how does he adapt with better players that he's never had before?
Well, and he's going to have to take some time. I think as much scouting as anyone can do from afar, he's going to have to work with the players to figure out how to balance everything together. I think one of the key strengths that I would give to Maresca's time at Chelsea is he figured out how to balance the team, right? So that it wasn't too attacking, it wasn't too defensive. I think we all wish the team would be more clinical in front of goal, but it's not because we weren't creating the chances. It's just simply because we can't score them at the rate in which some of our peers can. Finding that balance is going to be critical. Like, obviously, Liga is a completely different animal, a completely different beast to what the Premier League is. You have less time in the Premier League to complete passes. You have less time to get off shots. You have less time to transition appropriately. He's going to really need to figure that out with the players that he has and figure out a system that works for them. And I would imagine that he's going to meet with the leaders of the team and figure out kind of those strengths and weaknesses pretty quickly. Did want to transition over to the out of possession game because this was a big part of the Maresca era, right? Is what does the out of possession look like? Started heavy with the man-to-man marking, obviously transitioned to somewhat of a hybrid, a mid-press at points. Sam, Eosian asked this question, hybrid out of possession with more emphasis on man-to-man or something different from Rosenior than what we maybe saw with Maresca?
Yeah, my big bone of contention with Maresca in the championship was that he went man to man across the field, and I said he's going to get roasted alive because a lot of the times quality 1v1, if your defenders are not in form or if the confidence is low, you can get into all sorts of trouble. And we saw that, in the initial part of the season, Trev was down, Tosin was down, and, Josh King broke away, scored a goal that was disallowed. And then Isidore got through and scored because of a mistake. So those things tend to happen when the centre back quality can't compensate for just the 1v1 matchups that are there. And I think Rosenior is somebody who's moved away from zonal and now he goes man to man also. There's a lot of youth, there's a lot of speed in his side. So obviously the temptation is to go very hard in the press, but I think he is more balanced. Like you said, I think it's important to find in this era of playing 60, 70 games a season, not just going full steam like Marcelo Bielsa, but maybe having a dial to turn it down a notch. So, for example, passes per defensive action, the metric that measures pressing intensity. Chelsea are on first this season with Maresca at around 8 passes, and that's before 8 passes, and then Chelsea react and make a defensive action. Strasbourg are a little further back at around I think 11, 11.5. Some websites said 13. So there's a little bit of a delay
Whoa.
in terms of just maybe a little more caution, um and they're very good at what they do. I mean, the numbers, if you look at it, they just when they do high turnovers, it's I think there are like only 4 teams that have got more high turnovers than them this season, and only PSG have scored more from high turnovers than Strasbourg. So when they do get the ball in those areas, they do tend to do a lot of damage. So I think out of possession wise, that's definitely going to be something that we see. It's going to be man to man. It's going to be go against the Giants also. There was this game against PSG not too long ago, and everybody expected them to go into a back five and play it a little bit safe, but they went man to man on goal kicks, and they basically tried to press PSG, and that took them by surprise, and they were in a 3-1 lead, but unfortunately threw it away and went to 3-3. So mid block is when they do go a little bit of mix, like Yasin said, a little bit of hybrid. They do try to hold a 4-4-2. Sometimes you see a 5-2-3 like Crystal Palace. It's a very aggressive 5-2-3. So the luring process again happens here, saying, okay, we've only got two pivots, you've got spaces on either side, so you might want to occupy that space. And the moment somebody does, a centre back steps up, wins the ball, and boom, you've got a transition from the mid block. And from there, when you go to a lower block, one of the wingers, if it's a back four, drops in and becomes an extra defender, an extra wing back. And this is something Maresca also used to do in the championship. But interestingly, when he came to Chelsea, he just abandoned it altogether, went straight with a proper four, and tried to defend in a very compact block, because defending with a five obviously becomes harder to attack. So I think Rosenior will have to be a little bit more mindful of that. But he's gone into a 5-3-2, 5-4-1 with Strasbourg, sometimes a 4-4-2, but against bigger, better opposition, it's been conservative. And like we talked about, just other aspects of the play, I think the changes in build up we've already talked about. I think the goalkeeper will have a more adventurous role in that sense.
Oh
Whenever he's
no.
going to be so I think that's going to be a big challenge, and it's not very different from again what I saw with Maresca also, and we pointed this out also in the Enzo Maresca deep dive, saying Mads Hermansen is essentially the second centre back, and he's coming out of his box, he's sweeping a lot, and in the championship it's fine because the quality disparity is so high. But with Strasbourg, it's a bit interesting because they are the youngest side around. They're
Mhm.
not the best in the league. And he's still trying to get his goalkeeper to have 40 touches outside the box. Does it work in the Premier League? If somebody like a Pep hasn't tried it, it's quite interesting whether it will work. So I think that is something that could come back to bite him, like his goalkeeper, and how that has a ripple effect on the rest of his possession game will also be quite interesting. But that's where it stands.
I mean, I guess the broader question here for you, Sam, is obviously the man has principles in the way that he wants to play, but he is entering the unknown from a level perspective. He's managing the best club he's ever managed. He's playing against the best competition he's ever played against. He will certainly need to adjust what he wants to do to not only the players in a very short amount of time, because obviously Chelsea have a jam-packed January for him to get his ideas across, but he's also going to need to adapt to the circumstances that the league, the cups, and the Champions League offer. And I guess how much flexibility do you think that he has within his set of principles? It sounds like to me he might have a little bit more than Maresca, but is that what you're seeing as you've done your scouting?
Yeah, I think the thing that I do like about Rosinia is that he doesn't seem wedded to one particular aspect of just viewing players or even viewing a system. he changes quite often, and he's also been in press conferences where he's basically pointed out that maybe it didn't work. He's been quite honest about it, so not dogmatic, which is something that I really like about him. So I will forgive him if he obviously, as coming from Strasbourg, where he's had very little time to watch Chelsea very closely, he basically tries and makes a couple of decisions which don't really gel with the rest of the fans, saying why is this being tried out. But he will probably, if it doesn't work, revert from it and try getting closer to the solution. So I do think there is a lot more room to maneuver for him. Maresca's done an interesting amount of work for him in terms of the box midfield. It's something that we used until, I would say, we reached the Conference League, where we started playing like these sides that were playing back fives, and we switched from this box midfield to a diamond. And there have been some games in the Maresca where we've had to adapt and give Caicedo a little bit of help. So again, it'll be interesting to see, does he still stick with two? Does he actually see how it worked for us with a diamond midfield and say, okay, Caicedo is good enough to do what Barco and Doucouré couldn't do by themselves? So it'll be quite an interesting jump for him to. It's like trying to chop a tree with a butter knife, and suddenly somebody gives you a chainsaw. With all due respect to Strasbourg's quality, it's. I think he'll be quite amazed at some of the talent that he has. Estevao, for example, Andre Santos. Obviously, he's been with him. He's got the best out of him, profiled him magnificently, which we'll talk in midfield. But I think it'll be just a couple of weeks before he understands, the depth of the squad, the quality difference, and how he's able to use the artillery that we've given him.
I mean, let's close out on defense here because we talked about the out of possession piece of this, but in possession and the way he wants his team to defend, how do you see that shaping up compared to where we are right now and maybe compared to where he has been at Strasbourg?
And there were a lot of questions in Discord saying, for example, Zed asked us, what formation do you see Rosenior initially starting with and eventually settling on? He's played both back three and back four in, UEFA Conference League game, lots of big games. So how does that work? It's again, I think, a lot to do with Rosenior's trying to sort of figure out what really suits his side best. And from what I've seen, just the fluidity aspect of it and trying to pose a lot more problems to the opposition in terms of how his side responds in certain situations. I think the back three has benefited them definitely more, even though they've lost only one of the 8 games where they've played in a back four. So the record has not been bad, but they've been in, a couple of sides in the Conference League. So I don't really want to lean a lot into that data and say that, okay, this is definitive. But I think why the back three works for them is obviously the defensive players there aren't really up to scratch. They did lose a lot of good players and probably haven't been able to replicate the quality. Sar is there, but he's still very young. Saidu So was there last time. They've got a new centre back this time who's been playing on the right hand side, so Hergesberg. So um, it's I don't think a back four really suits the defensive strengths. If you look at Ben Chilwell, for example, who's also come in and had to play not really as athletically brilliant as he used to be. So just I think from a balance perspective, he's realized maybe a back three is something that works better. So I don't think he's wedded to a back three. I think he's just a smart manager who's looked at his resources and said, this works better for me. So what's really good in the back three is that there are a lot of moving parts. We talked about Geladue a little earlier on. So he's a fullback, but he's also played as the right centre back in a back three. And this is quite similar, if you remember, Nick, Thomas Tuchel playing Cesar Azpilicueta as the right centre back.
Yeah.
And you would often see in the first game against Burnley and the first goal of the Tuchel era, you saw him bombard from right centre back into the box to score. And that's something that happens a lot with Rosenior. Nobody expects the right centre back to end up inside the box. And that's what he does. He adds an extra full back there. He gives it a little bit of unpredictability in that position. And that exactly is something that he tries with other positions in the defense. We talked about the wing backs often hold width, and the wing backs are both attackers. So, they're very good in those positions. If you isolate them, your wing backs are not, for example, Ben Chilwell or maybe a more defensive, Diego Dallo at under Amorim, for example. Diego Moreira, who's been quite good at Strasbourg. And on the right hand side, you've got Doué, who's played there. You've got Ouattara, who's played there. So a lot of really good attacking talent that holds with. And obviously, we talked about the swaps. So you'll see wing backs going in, out, rotating with the strikers. Sometimes even Emega, we'll talk about him in the striking aspects of it. He moves to the right hand side, and you'll see double with the wing backs there as well. So a lot of interesting thing happens with the defense. It's not really a very static defense that is okay. I've got three pure defenders and just out there to defend. It's a lot to do with how to progress the ball and how to create issues in attack as well, which I really like about Rosenior. The one thing though I will underline in bold is that they have struggled to deal with a lot of long balls over the top against the rest defense. So transitions have been an interesting issue. I will put that down to youth and inexperience. I think they've consistently showed that in duels and decisions, and it'll be interesting to see how the trend changes because Rosinia is going to manage a side that has made 61 errors leading to shots or goals, the third highest in the league since Maresca's appointment. So there is a lot of uncertainty there. There is a crisis of confidence. None of our centre backs have really stepped up and said, this spot is mine. So, a young manager who's going to come into that same position with young talent in a league that is very unforgiving, I think he still has to figure that one out by himself.
Let's transition over to my favorite area of the team to watch, and that's the midfield because obviously Chelsea have been in an interesting place with the midfield this year. Injuries, suspensions, depth not necessarily performing up to the level, and you have a manager in Rosenior who has worked with Andre Santos, who maybe didn't see as much game time under Maresca as we anticipated. He has inherited midfielder Reece James, who is gone up against the likes of Rodri and the best midfielders in the league. Obviously throw Declan Rice and the like in there and come out on top multiple times. He has Caicedo back from suspension. Enzo Fernandez, who I think is giving it everything he has, but probably needs a rest. I mean, what do you look at from Rosenior midfield? Like, what are the different profiles, and where do you think he will play each one of these kind of core four pieces between Caicedo, Enzo, Santos, and Reece James?
Yeah, we talked about the back three, Nick, and I think it also helps the double pivot because it's not really the kind of midfield that has done what a top class midfield in the Premier League will do. You need, a really strong midfielder that is very good in duels, that is very good in recoveries. You look at, say, for example, Rodri at City. You look at, Caicedo for us. You look at Declan Rice for Arsenal. You've got one player that is just physically very dominant and able to recycle possession endlessly, do the needful in terms of cleaning up and essentially just keep the ball in the other side of the pitch. I think with midfield, the big issue is they've realized that Paco isn't really, somebody who's physically imposing. Decore is quite an interesting profile because he can play midfield, he can play fullback, and he can play centre back, and that's Reece James's brief too. I mean, he can play those three positions by himself. So what is going to happen with those midfield profiles is again quite open to interpretation, but I would like most of them to be fit first. So Rosenior has that headache. So I think Caicedo's role is quite set in stone. I think he will be given the brief to do the defensive bits really well. And from what I've seen, he's not going to be left all alone in 40 yards of space to try and stop transitions. He's very capable of it, but I think a lot of it will be okay, there's another pivot next to you. There will be some help in terms of reducing the amount of space that you have to cover. So that will help. The big thing about me, Nick, is when I'm seeing this could be Enzo Fernandez returning to his Benfica role. And whether that is a good thing, whether that is a bad thing, will be, I think, quite interesting to see because when he was playing in that position, he was not arguably, he was Europe's best deep progressing midfielder. He was incisive. He's got the vision to pick out passes from deep. He can open up, midfield lines. He can essentially pick out some really good pockets. So he'll see more of the pitch. He will get 100 odd touches, but what happens to the goals? What happens to the kind of box crashing that has happened? The kind of adventurous positions he's taken is a bit of a question mark. I will also refer that, Rosenior platformed Andre Santos superbly, and he did test out both his strengths. He played him as the deepest lying central midfielder, and not just saying, okay, you're going to be the DM because you're very good at it, but he also said, I'm going to place you with three other midfielders, out of which two are very good at helping you defensively. So if you wish to bomb forward, bomb forward. And so you got the best of both worlds from Santos. You not just got his calmness, which we saw against Manchester City, the ability to orchestrate, the ability to pick those passes, turn under pressure, but you also saw him go in Liga and come out with, just an incredible amount of goal assist contributions, which this side would absolutely need. So again, Rosenior will be looking at that kind of talent and saying, why am I still going with Caicedo and Enzo? Maybe I need to go with one more midfielder and make us stronger in the middle of the park. That's completely, plausible scenario with him. But I think this is the two questions for me here are how the two leaders are profiled. Is Enzo going to drop deeper? Is Reece James going to have a midfield role? Whether his hands are tied here, we don't know, Nick. But if he does have that role, is he going to play the Decore role where he's going to be more defensively oriented, have some space with, probably share responsibilities a little bit with Caicedo? And I think just whether it's going to be a two-man midfield or three-man midfield. So, like you said, there's every chance that Andre Santos comes out the winner in this one. And you probably see Enzo return to what he's more comfortable with, but there will be repercussions elsewhere out of possession.
Yeah, you could even see like you mentioned the wing backs as attackers. You could see a 5-3-2 where you do have the three midfielders in there, in whatever combination you want to put them in, and then you have someone like Garnacho and Big Steve out providing the width, in an attacking sense, and maybe have Cole Palmer and Liam Delap, who are receiving those kind of incisive passes from Enzo or Andre Santos to do something with it a little bit closer to goal. I think your point about Enzo is a really interesting one here, because I think of all the credit that Maresca should get, and I do believe he deserves a fair amount of credit. What Enzo Fernandez has done over the last year and a half has, I think, transformed his perception in the minds of Chelsea fans from guy that was purchased for way too much money to holy shit, this guy's really worth it, and look at all the things he can do closer to goal, and look at the finishing, and look at the leadership. And I think Enzo Fernandez, probably heading into the Maresca season, was like have we seen the best of him? Are we going to be able to get the best out of him? And I think, if anything, he's probably the one player who benefited from the Maresca system the most, in that sort of kind of hybrid advanced role. So I'm intrigued too to see if his movement will push him forward more into that area, as he's one of the better finishers on the team, or if they're gonna rely on the rest of the team to step up their finishing, and that he's going to be the one to unlock from deep. Is that a fair assessment?
It is, and I think that's something that is obviously just very much kept me awake and said, okay, what is he going to do? There's every chance, and we'll talk about quite an interesting aspect of it just in a bit in terms of attack. But when you say sharing responsibilities, that's something Strasbourg have really struggled to do, because the goals have come from, like last season, they came a lot from Andre Santos. They came from up front. And this season, they've got some underlying issues that they haven't been able to fix. So, what happens if the goals dry up? What happens if the supply pipeline is broken? What do you do with Enzo Fernandez? Do you still want him taking 100 touches and really not giving you the 10 GA that he's already got this season? I think then Rosenior is also the kind of manager who's not going to keep him next to Caicedo and say, maybe your position is somewhere else. And it's quite interesting because, okay, should we just? I can't really like blend any points
No,
from
do
midfield
it.
attack, so I'm
Let's
just
do
going to,
it.
yeah. So yeah, basically, an interesting thing in attack is what I really love about Rosinia, and I'll say this with respects to attack, is that he's got different kinds of attackers, and he's not really tried to fix, square pegs and round holes or vice versa. He's
Hmm.
really really seen them and said, I understand you're not good at this. So maybe it is, you choose to do what you want to do, and this becomes your secondary responsibility. So, for example, Diego Moreira, whenever he does play in the front three and not as a wing back, he's usually out wide because that's what Moreira likes. He likes being out near the touchline. He likes beating people, cutting inside. He's 2-footed, so he can offer you a lot of stuff. Now, when Moreira isn't playing well and he wants to make a switch, for example, he brought on Julio Enciso. Now, Enciso is not a winger. He is an attacking midfielder. And what happens is, interestingly, Enciso doesn't end out wide. He doesn't start, going near the touchline and becoming a winger. He actually comes inside and he becomes a number 10. And then you'll see the fullback or the wing back on that side trying to fill that gap with bombing forward and doing those kinds of things. There's every chance in attack, somebody who's following De Zerbi very closely, that we could see Joao Pedro also at left wing. That is also an option that I
Hmm.
think comes in, and he becomes the left-sided 10, and then we see a left-sided fullback bombing forward. So that's again an interesting tweak that I think Rosenior might just look at very, very closely, because De Zerbi's done that to very good effect, and Joao Pedro really liked it, just being behind the centre forward, being able to pick up that left half space that he really, really likes, and trying to operate from there. So that's the one thing that I'm looking at. He profiles attackers so well. So he knows Estevao, he's going to be a winger and a number 10. He looks at Kendry Pies and says, okay, you can also switch between wing and center forward and basically like those central positions, and you're very good at it. He's not going to make people go into roles and try to do things they're not good at. And I think that's where a little bit that I didn't enjoy, just Maresca's attacking profiles a little bit. There were some things, for example, Pedro Neto coming into central positions, being very good there, hardly ever played there. So I think Rosenior will be quite switched on to those things. He will look at those young talents and he'll think, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to try and make those profiles a little bit more fluid, a little bit. I want to make attacking fun for them essentially, and I think that's something that excites me a lot. The one thing that I will highlight is, in terms of just weaknesses or big question marks, Nick, is that in terms of their underlyings, they're definitely not a top four side. Now, their shots taken this season placed them fourth from bottom, which is quite an alarming number. And what's more alarming for me is that this is not just a one off. They were 16th for shot quantity last season also. And what's really, really saved them is that the quality of the shots is always good. And they manufacture fast breaks. They get into positions where they catch defenses in disarray, and they're able to basically convert good chances. And if you look at the shot quality or like non-penalty expected goals per shot, they are always around the top or top two. So the shot quality is great, but if you're not shooting well in the Premier League, more often than not, your attack stinks. So this could there's every scenario that could happen where his first problem is he understands the profile of the attackers well, but just because we have so many shot shy profiles, like Joao Pedro doesn't go above 1.5 shots a game. We've got Estevao who's managing good numbers but doesn't play very often. Then you've got other Gittins hasn't been able to get the kind of numbers that he's usually good at. So, Delap hasn't been crossing 2 shots. So how does he get the shot count up and how does he get the goal count up? I think that's going to be the big challenge for him. So it's a very intriguing mix for me, Nick. Somebody who understands attackers very well, which is quite weird because he's a fullback and a midfielder, but he listens to them and he sees them closely and clearly understands where the strengths are. And I think it will be interesting to see how he works with the guys that he has here.
Two questions for you on the attack. First question: which players in our attacking, whether 3-4, whatever it ends up being, do you think will benefit most from the way that he wants to play attacking football, both in a possession dominant game and a more counterattacking game?
Yeah, I mean, if I look at the kind of performances he's brought out of, say, Sebastian Nanasi and even Felix Lemarechal or all the other guys, just the amount of freedom that he gives him. And I'm probably picking out Barco as well, and Andre Santos, because there was never a brief I felt after watching the game saying, don't pass too quickly. And we've seen Maresca do that where, the ball's gone too quickly and he said, I don't want ping pong games and I don't want people passing quickly and trying to do something. But he's given Barco so much room to pick out and be creative. He's probably done that to Nanasi as well, saying if you look for a pass in those attacking areas, take it. I'm not going to stop it. So in terms of untethered creativity and threat, and especially the two-way profiles, I think Estevao and Cole Palmer definitely take this opportunity and say we're going to improve. Delap is somebody who I also see fitting very, very well. It's going to be more of the kind of situations which he's attuned to. He's also somebody who loves drifting out wide, and Emega was also given the brief saying, move out wide to the flank and then try vacate the center for other people to occupy and try to get there. And Delap did that a lot at Ipswich. So maybe if there are opportunities to manufacture those moments, then there's every bit, you see them do really, really well. But I will again point this out to you, Nick. It's the big thing is just how do you bridge the difference between the two dynamics. Chelsea have suddenly become very, very good at fast breaks, as at Manchester City. You're
Yep.
top of the league for fast breaks with 30 of them. And Rosenior is coming from a side that doesn't play long passes. He's obviously looking at 9 fast breaks, which is a massive number. So how is he going to up the shot quantity? How is he going to utilize the pace in some of those profiles? And most importantly, what is going to be his solution against low blocks? Because I still look at his profiles at wing back trying to cross into the box a little too much. I still see that there are some issues in terms of how those profiles could be utilized better. Just like interchanges between the center forward and the two attacking midfielders. Maybe there is a quality disparity. Maybe there's, not really the kind of, I would say, the kind of opportunities you'd probably see with the Palmer and Estevao in the middle. So I think it's also, I have to be a little mindful that probably not ideal for them to be in the same comparison zone. So maybe it improves here, but I think that was all contingent on how well he's able to bump up our numbers. The profiling, I'm absolutely happy with.
That was going to be my second question, which you already answered, which is he's going to see more low blocks at Chelsea than he did at Strasbourg, obviously, and how he deals with that different scenario is going to be fascinating to watch over time. Let's end this one with a bit of Q&A because we've had a few comments both from Twitter and Discord that I think are questions, I should say, not comments, that would be really interesting to get your perspective on. I'll try and provide some color commentary as well. Let's talk about player benefits, right? We get this one from Pranay who says, pretty sure you'll cover almost everything like you always do. But if anything that piques my interest, which of our players will benefit the most from Rosenior's appointment? And do we have the players he needs to implement his style, or does he need to play to the squad's strengths for the next 6 months? I'm paraphrasing here, and then reset in the summer. So let's take the first question first, second question second.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the players that benefit most, in my opinion, I'm looking at Malo Gusto. I think somebody who's
Mm.
already been on an upward trajectory. I think he is somebody who's probably going to be looked at in that wide wing back, full back role, and he's going to probably do the stuff that he's very good at. So bombing into the box and doing shunting up and down, being very good going both ways. I think Malo Gusto probably returns to his best in terms of his profile. So that's going to be one. Um, I would also say I do expect Enzo also to have a very, very interesting trajectory. I don't know whether it's going to be benefit, but I'm definitely going to see a lot more of, I would say, him dropping deeper and trying to get us out of situations where we've struggled a little bit in the past. So I think Enzo's trajectory is something that I'm most intrigued to see under Rosenior. I don't know how he's going to profile him, to be honest. Whether it's going to be Andre Santos, which I would love to see. He starts off deeper, but then he ends up ghosting in like Lampard and basically gets into the same positions that he does. Outstanding. I would say that he's probably going to go from maybe 7, 8 to maybe a 11, 12 GA kind of midfielder, which would be
Whoa.
absolutely invaluable for us. So definitely those two players are guys that I'm looking at. Does he need any players? I would say I am still very concerned about how he's going to use his current center forward options. I think that's a big question mark for me in terms of how he's going to see Joao Pedro, because the last thing you want is him coming and saying, I see you as my number nine, because that experiment will last probably a month and a half, and he'll have to learn the hard way that against, stubborn back threes with three robust center backs trying to keep an eye on Joao Pedro, it's just going to be zero shots on the day, and an anonymous performance, which has happened countless times. So I think he will have to make do with, I think, Delap, and he's worked with him before at Hull City, and we've seen probably his best performance in a Chelsea shirt against Manchester City. So maybe that was a prelude, happy that his old boss is coming home, something to look forward to. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed on this one. But just in terms of the pipeline that you give your center forward, I'm not really sold on what Rosenior can do with our center forward options. So that, I think, is something that if we can give him in January, which I highly doubt, but come summer is somewhere where I'll really judge him on that.
Yeah, let's. I would say your Andre Santos pick is excellent, and certainly one that I'm looking forward to. I think Big Steve is going to have a big second half of the season under Rosenior. I just see him playing, a number of different positions, not only on the right wing as we've seen him do. He started before Maresca left, playing a little bit on the left as well. I think he'll play through the middle. I think anything you can do to get Cole Palmer closer to the goal so he can shoot the ball at the goal is what I'm looking forward to seeing. And I think Big Steve could play a role in helping that happen. I do think because Maresca's gone, there is always a chance that Nico Jackson does make a return to Chelsea at some point. Let's keep our eyes and ears on that, because what you're describing and the way that he profiles center forward, Sam, Nico would almost be the tailor-made fit to kind of be that transitional forward, the one that can flex out wide, the one that can hold up the ball. I just see a huge potential for him if we do play like you've been kind of profiling.
Oh yeah, I mean, I hear you, to be honest. And both of us are massive Nico Jackson fans, and we both get absolutely hammered everywhere we go because of it. But my solidarity with you, to be honest. And I think people are slowly realizing just how thankless a task it was for Nico Jackson. You even in games where he did nothing, where he had like one shot all game, he still really pestered the centre backs. No matter who came in, it was Ibrahim Konate, came back bruised, battered, not really feeling good. And that's really something that we've missed. And Delap is somebody who's, I think, just maybe a notch below, where he's more about fighting rather than making it through the football. So I'm hoping that sort of transitions in and he gets that bastard in him to come out via the football, not out of it. So I think if you get Nico Jackson in, even on loan, back from loan from Bayern, and you forego a little of the money, give him a fresh start with Liam Rosenior. I think until Emega comes home, there's every chance that you boost his profile even further, and maybe take a call in the summer. So I think that's a great call from you. Nico Jackson could be amazing, but again, we're just dreaming here. So don't really think that's going to happen.
No, yeah, I don't either. And for those who had Nico Jackson mentioned on this episode, you can cross that one off on your bingo card, because we have now successfully completed that. We did get a question from Megan, which I think you've already answered, Sam, which is tactical questions, strengths, and stuff like that. So I will skip ahead. Just say thank you to Megan. Let's go down, because we talked about winners and losers. Let's go down to Van Burnett, who really wants to understand the Andre Santos of it all. And I think we did talk about this a little bit, but Andre Santos can play in a number of different positions. He's relatively flexible. He can play further forward, as we've seen under Maresca. He can play further back, as we've seen under Rosenior. So I guess just take your best guess, Sam, as to where he will more frequently line up under Chelsea's Rosenior and not Strasbourg's Rosenior.
I think there's a good chance that this happens exactly how Van Burnett calls it. You see Joao Pedro maybe not being able to do what he's very good at in even that number 10 role, because I think you've given him that option, that opportunity to play his strongest position, and he hasn't really made a lot of difference. And you're obviously blocking off Cole Palmer in those positions as well, because he does prefer the number 10 role. So I think there could be an option where either Rosenior does what he does and he shifts him to left wing to see whether there's a solution there with Estevao, Joao Pedro, and Cole Palmer behind the lap. And that could be an interesting fix in certain games. But I think with Andre Santos, you genuinely have to use him. What I would say is just try to get him as much of a backup option, kind of up to speed as you can. You really can't incorporate him as a third midfielder because that probably will take away a lot of, where does Cole Palmer play, because a 4-3-3 doesn't have a number 10. He'll have to be on the right wing. He'll have to track back a lot more. He'll have to do a lot of, man marking responsibilities, which you probably don't want. So I think there's every chance that you'll see Santos do what he's doing. He'll probably step in for Caicedo more. He'll probably step in for Enzo more. Probably end the season with a significant amount of minutes, and probably being able to offer a lot of post 60 minutes, really really high energy, fresh legs to try and close games out, which he did against Manchester City. That's how you use him, and eventually next season, then you get him to compete against Enzo Fernandez and try to get him a starter spot there. So
We also had other questions, and I just want to shout these people out for sending these in. Eocene with another question, Pool Shark with another question, Night T with another question. We're going to end with one from T Clot, who I think really kind of talks to the moment of it all, which they say, what differentiates Rosenior from Graham Potter in being a solid out of possession manager, but left struggling with chance creation in possession for a side who faces predominantly compact defensive structures. I think we would call them low blocks affectionately, rather than having the space to counterattack like he has done. And this is, I think, the question, right? This is a question that
Mhm.
Chelsea have been trying to answer for years, not just in this moment, but how do you break these low blocks? If you're going to take possession, how do you make the most out of it? What are your thoughts about Rosenior and Potter, a name that I think a lot of Chelsea fans shudder to hear at this very moment?
Yeah, I think I mean, it was the most outstanding question out of all the ones that we did get, through Discord and Twitter. So I thought I'd keep it last because it is, to be honest, it just knocked me into one of those, I don't know, Vietnam War memes, PTSD memes, where I was just like hallucinating a little bit, saying, yeah, I mean, that hits close to home, because I think Rosinier's standout strength is his man management. Everywhere, whoever talks about him, even in his interviews and stuff, he's genuinely referred to as obviously being very very good, because he got his UEFA Pro at 32. He's a very bright individual, but most of all, he's extremely empathetic, which is quite evident with his views in general, how he airs about social issues, and how he talks about them with great empathy and consideration. But he's very very good with players. There's a great video with Hull City where they put a mic on him for a couple of hours, and they let him roam around during practice, and just small conversations with his players, talking about the game, telling them how's your day, and having these little interactions. Just a very human person first. And he himself said that management is just 90% social competency and the 10% is football. So looks at it as a very human thing. But unfortunately, that's exactly the kind of reputation Graham Potter came with. So you're looking at exactly the same thing, manager who probably made the jump a little too soon, frightened connections, um, really struggle to do the kind of chance creation that the questions have been asked at Strasbourg as well. Is he going to be able to earn the respect of far more senior players? All of it is a major major question mark. So that's definitely one that even I can't answer, to be very honest. So I'm hoping that there's a lot more to Rosenior. He definitely seems like an extremely intelligent individual, capable of looking at players for just their strengths, and trying to build a system around them. I don't think he's going to come on day one and say it's going to be 3-4-2-1, and we'll just play this for 6 months. He will take his time to figure people out. He will take his time to figure strengths out, and he'll try to platform people well, which is what I think you need at this point in time, and which is why I think his appointment made more sense over more established and dogmatic managers who may have been available post the World Cup.
Yeah, I always think about the expectations game to kind of end this one, right? Because if I were Rosenior coming into this role midway through the season, not knowing the squad, not knowing their strengths and weaknesses, I think the first conversation I'm having is with Reece James. The second conversation I'm having is with Enzo Fernandez, Moise Caicedo, Tosin Adarabioyo, whoever you consider to be leaders of Chelsea Football Club, and trying to understand them as people and as professionals and trying to take it from there, because there's enough footballing talent in this team to do special stuff. Certainly, there is a ton of talent, a ton of expensively assembled talent, and the results have been poor for a minute. And so, my hope is maybe the ginning them up as people behind the scenes is a really good thing for a team that might feel a little bit fractured. I guess let's end by talking about, like, what do you expect for the rest of the season? Let's take the next 5.5 months, Sam. It's January 6th as we're recording this. By the end of May, Chelsea are where in the Premier League, where in the Champions League, where in the Cups?
Yeah, I think this is a big no for me, because I think the cardinal sin is hiring a manager in January. I think that's one thing. If I ever have the fortune of becoming, I mean, in misfortune, whatever you want to call it, if of becoming a sporting director, I would never ever get a managerial appointment bang in the middle of the season. I think it comes with a lot of instability. It comes with a lot of volatility, and there's a 1 in a billion chance you end up with somebody like a Thomas Tuchel who leads you to the Champions League. Obviously, we've had that happened to us twice, where we've fired managers twice, and both of them have led us to the Champions League. But it does not happen in this age and era. I hope I'm wrong, and we do win this one as well. But I think the expectation is just for him to be given 6 months to figure his squad out. I think that's something that Strasbourg wanted him to do in his first year. And I think the brief from the sporting directors will be, we need you to condense it to 6 months. Figure out who plays where, in what position. Figure out what you need for the summer, because I don't want you to come in the summer, assess your squad for 2 months, and the transfer window shuts. So tell us what you need. We will try and find you a younger, better alternative, somebody who you can groom into that particular role. And then we can give you the next season to be judged on. I think this season is just get into the Champions League spots. I think that is the only requirement. I don't think Champions League becomes any, I don't think it holds sort of sway. They will insist on getting into the knockouts and trying to be competitive there. But I think most of all, they will want to be in the Champions League, because that has 100 different ripple effects in terms of front of shirt, which we still don't have, stadium, all of those things, everything in terms of commercials then rely on that. So I think they will insist on top four. So in my opinion, just profile your squad well, give Estevao the kind of games he needs, give Andre Santos the kind of games he needs, make sure Palmer doesn't get disillusioned. I think that's been quite apparent with his body language, that he does not look happy. So do what you're supposed to do to show him that this is a system built around him and he's going to thrive in it. And best of all, try to just, you've been given a big squad for a reason. Rotate, learn to listen to the medical guys and give them the minutes they need. So get through unscathed. Do not let Arsenal win the title, and get Champions League back home. I think those are my only three. What about you? Do you have expectations with you?
I think mine are pretty muted, to be honest, and I agree with everything that you just said. It's a weird time of year to make a hire. It's a weird time of year to be doing in-season player assessments. It's a weird time of year to be fighting on four fronts and to have expectations to win stuff. I think Chelsea's ownership and sporting director team have caused a lot of upset within the organization by making this move now. Enzo Maresca did the same. I think they share responsibility. I don't expect us to win anything through the end of the year. I think that ship is probably sailed at this point, without sounding too negative. I just it's a weird moment, and I think that top five is there for the taking. Certainly, it's there for the taking. You're looking at the challengers for that top five spot. I mean, if you can't nail that down this year, if that's not where your sole focus is, then I don't know what you're doing. So I'd love to make a run at the Carabao Cup. I'd love to knock Arsenal out of that and maybe cause them a little bit of downfield effects in their chase for other titles. But yeah, I think the focus will really be on the Premier League, and how do you continue to accumulate points and not make it a end of season, last day of the season, fight for the right place. So that's my hope anyway. And look, I really do hope that he gets a fair shake from everyone. I know this has been an
Mhm.
incredibly difficult time for everybody. We were over there while this was happening. It was incredibly difficult to kind of process it all, and obviously now that we're home, we're going to be doing a lot more of that. But as a guy, he seems like a pretty cool guy. I hope that
Mhm.
he really does have an effect on the team, and I hope that he's given a fair shake by the fans, even if the fans are disillusioned with the broader project. So yeah, I don't know. Is that fair?
It is. I think you've been very generous, and genuinely, I think that's exactly how the fan base needs to respond. You cannot change the hierarchy. You cannot really do much in that sense. I don't think they give two shits about what we think, but it's important that the guy coming in is immune to those things. You want to make the environment as good for him as possible, and it's something that the sporting directors haven't learned. They started off with giving a manager 33 players in a changing room that wouldn't fit, and they're still trying to make shit happen. And I think from fans perspective, you want to welcome him, you want to tell him that it's a clean slate, you're not to blame, go out there and make things happen. I think there will be enough opportunities for him to, I'm not asking us to give us the world. Don't give me heaven tomorrow, give me a battle of the bridge against Arsenal, and spoil that title, one-off games, give me a Champions League knockout win that'll be in memory and give us something to hold on to for next season. And I think people will really, really follow you into next season thinking something can happen.
Yeah, and support the players. I mean, if you're against this whole thing and you don't believe in Rosenior and you don't believe in the sporting structure, just get out there and give Reece James and Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo and the rest of the team your support. It is going to be really, really important that they, don't. I think your point about disillusionment is critical. Like, let's make the bridge the best atmosphere as possible. The away fans on Sunday at City said it in our match review. Were fucking amazing. Like, really continue that on, and every little thing will be all right, as I think the tune goes. But we're gonna end this one. It's an extended Liam Rosenior special. I didn't expect this to go an hour 12 or whatever it is, but I think Sam has always incredible insights into who the manager is, profile, strengths and weaknesses, different positional groups, all the stuff. So if you're on Twitter or you're reading the newsletter, we get emails about Sam's writing all the time. Continue to send those in. It fuels him to do more and more and more. And look, Chelsea fans, we're back on Wednesday. Of course, we're back as you're listening to this against Fulham. Would be a big 3 points for Callum McFarland's Chelsea, and set up Liam Rosenior for better things to come. So until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.